Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Hope everybody is having an unbelievable start. Well, shoot, man, it's middle of the week, so having an unbelievable week. Look, I am going to be as upfront and succinct as I can about addressing this because I think it's something that we definitely need to address. Before I move into this, I have to remind you that we are in the middle of a fundraiser for the work we're doing with Black Man Lead, a rite of passage initiative that deals with the socialization of young Black males into Black manhood. It defines Black manhood, it gives them a role, a position, a point, a purpose, and a directive of who they are and what they are to become. We also provide wraparound services. We also, as an organization, deal with all the things that our young ladies deal with, from sex trafficking to domestic abuse to other issues. And we have been doing this work for decades. Those who have followed me for years on social media know the work I've done. We definitely need your support. Don't forget, the Odyssey Project also has a research arm, an institution that I had, and we have done uh, thousands of hours of research that has lended to a lot of the programs we've developed, our approach to dealing with the issues that plague our community. And we must continue to champion the understanding of the Black enigma in the US and in the diaspora if we're ever to reach a point where our understanding unleashes our power to move on our own behalf, because as of right now, we lack in that tremendously. With that being said, I want to move into what I'm here to talk about. Unfortunately, we had another school shooting on yesterday, and a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are comparing it or connecting it to the mass murder uh, of blacks in Buffalo at the Top, I believe it was, Top's grocery store. Um, First and foremost, my prayers and condolences go out to the family of all of the victims. This one, it hits home no matter how you feel about politics, race, uh, and all of the things that we're forced to deal with in this community. It doesn't distract me or pull me away from who I am and what I must be focused on and fighting on, but still, it hits a certain kind of way when you see young children targeted like that. Um, I want to deal with some myths, some misconceptions, and uh, I want to challenge my people uh, to advance themselves in what we need to be doing for us. Um, what's interesting about this is that you would think that it's going to be hard for politicians to play the race card and to incite or to trigger uh, a debate on race, because this happened in a predominantly Latino community. It was a crime committed by a Latino, and the victims were themselves Latino. And so you would sit up and say, hey, look, this is something else. And we should be looking at it from that angle. But some kind of way that discussion came, I'm still trying to figure out how. Oh, I know. They contrasted it. They found a way to contrast it between that and the killings in Buffalo. Um, so my thing is, I am in not any way in need of any competition for who got did the worst in any particular situation. I believe that the Latino community will rally around their people. They have always done that. So I'm not here to champion their cause. I am sending out my condolences because no one should have to drop their child off at school only to find out that they're not coming home, or to send their child to school. I saw a picture of someone shared of a couple who were dropping their daughter off, who had just celebrated making honor roll, and they had promised her they were going to pick her up and they were going to do things, and it never happened because that was goodbye. It's never natural for a parent to bury a child. I've had a few friends who've had to do it, and I've watched the anguish and the suffering. There are people who are going to have lives that never ever looked the way they looked before yesterday, and they're going to have to grapple with that. So my heart goes out to them. But I want to talk about something I see when things like this happens that really truly troubles me, and that is the prayer brigade. My prayers are with you. We need to put prayer back in the school. And you're talking to a very spiritual person. You're talking to a person who grew up understanding or thinking I understood prayer and being in a position where my family prayed all the time. We were in church. I am not a religious person, but I am a very spiritual person. I pray and commune with God, the divine, the most high, however you want to refer to that source that is at the core, that a lot of people right now are having problems and questions because of what we are experiencing in this world. And what we need to understand in this time is that prayer is not a panacea. And far too often, I don't know why the camera is flaring up like that, but far too often, we are seeing people talk about prayer as if it's a panacea. If we wouldn't have taken prayer, we act like they weren't killing and lynching us while prayer was in school. Let me explain something to you. Evil and darkness has always existed. Mental health issues have already always existed. And you have a environment and culture in which morality is a lost concept, where everybody is now in a world focusing on itself. We are literally birthing narcissists at an alarming rate, and that comes at a consequence, that comes as a price. But I want to talk first and foremost about not getting caught up and distracted as a people. I'm all for saying we need to find a way to make our children safe. There's no way, again, that we should be worried about sending our children uh, off to school and then having to fret throughout the day whether they're going to be okay or not. Getting phone calls and text messages about schools being locked down and going into a panic because we don't know why it's being locked down or what has happened. That's a problem that we need to be aware of and confront. But what I want to do is say we need to focus. And when I say we need to focus, is we've got to get out of this stupor of believing that there's going to be a supernatural intervention into the problematic issues that we have literally experienced over the last 400 years. It's not that I don't believe that God exists. I do. I have seen God move in my life, but God has always moved according to my movement. God has never moved in my life while I'm sitting still. God empowered me with a mind to think. God empowered me with a voice to speak. God empowered me with physicality and intellect to be able to think and move around my problems and to solve them. That's what we must do. That has been my goal. And if you ever have paid attention to the way that I move, the way that I think, and how I operate, I don't talk about problems without talking about solutions. If you watch my videos, I'm going to talk about what's going on. I'm going to talk about what we need to do. And it's no different now. Number one is we need to protect ourselves. We need to train ourselves. We need to be prepared. There are people out there who mean us no good and a bunch of other people no good. We have to be honest with ourselves and say that while there is an issue in this country with race, while Black people remain at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, while Black people find themselves in the middle of some discriminatory behavior almost constantly, that there are people out there that are harming other people. And so it's not just people out there that want to harm us. There are people out there that harm anything. We have to talk about the fact that most school shootings, and I and Dr. Blanchard wrote a position paper on the billion-dollar industry that has become school security, but nothing is actually happening. Because if you really pay attention to it, school shootings aren't happening in inner city Black schools. They're not. School shootings are always normally happening in more affluent suburban schools. The vast majority, I'm talking in the high percentile, are happening in inner school. But yet, all of the security and the resource officers and heavy police presence are in inner city schools. Is it violence in inner city schools? Yes, but it's not mass shootings. It's normally kids fighting, kids hurting one another, and that needs to be dealt with. But there's also a way to deal with that. We need to, again, be in control of our own destiny. We can never be in a situation where we are expecting those who are at the very core of our problems to be the ones who solve them. They don't benefit from us becoming empowered. They don't benefit from us becoming autonomous. They don't benefit from us rising. So we have to be very careful of that. So when we look at situations like what's happening here, what do we do differently? Number one is we have to develop the ability and concern to actually be connected and care about our own. Like I said, what's going to happen in Uvalde is that community is going to unite. That community is going to galvanize. From what I already heard, the two existing local funeral homes in that area have already come together and both agreed that they are going to handle the entire burial processes for all families at no charge. They are already galvanized. They're already operating. They're already moving. There's going to be all kind of things that come together, and there'll be some form of determining what they're going to do moving forward to protect their children. See, they will understand that it's their responsibility to protect their children. Now, at the end of the day, all of that's not going to bring those babies back and those teachers back and that grandmother back that was killed. None of that is going to be the case. Uh, there are going to be families that are trying to piece their lives together for years to come because of what has happened. There's going to be questions, and I understand that part of it, and there will be need for mental health resources, and I'm almost certain that the community will rally around that need as well. My concern is, how are we rallying around our kids? How are we rallying around the families of the people in Buffalo? How are we responding to the great need of poverty, of the poverty stricken in our communities? There are so many different things that I touch on an ongoing basis of where we are in need and how we're moving in point, that we have to sit up and look at this. And the point I'm here to make is there's a place for prayer. When you study prayer, when you really truly study prayer, prayer is about revelation. Prayer is not a replacement for action. Prayer is not a replacement for courage. Prayer is not a replacement for what needs to be done. Prayer is about revelation. Prayer is about understanding. Prayer is about guidance. It's about illumination. It's about connectivity. It's for reassurance, but it is never the replacement for what you are required to do. And that's the problem. We spend way much too time sending prayers and way too much time talking about prayer and not taking action. I have no problem with you praying. I pray. I pray daily. I pray multiple times daily. But the more I pray, the more active I become. Because the more I pray, the more revelation I receive and the more understanding I have about what needs to be done. And it's not prayer that does it. It's you understanding through prayer what needs to be done and doing it. And that's a problem we have. That's a problem we have, is that far too many of us are hooked on the idea that there's going to be a supernatural intervention. And the supernatural intervention may have already taken place and we didn't act. See, there has to be a taking possession of, there has to be a reaching out and acquiring of something. There has to be moving into something. It's not that there isn't a power available to us. The power is not going to do the work for us. We need to become more unified. We need to understand that a great deal of our problem is at the core of the disintegration of the Black family. I've talked about this before. See, the Black family is an institution, and in that institution is another institution that's extremely important because it's the foundation of all of that comes, and that is the marriage. The marriage has been spurned. The marriage has been made a mockery of. Marriage isn't treated or given the same importance. Everything is about me now. Everything is about I now. Everything is focused on whether or not I'm okay in a situation. No, you're not supposed to be in any situation where you're being abused, mistreated, mishandled, uh, misled, deceived, or any of those things. But we got way too many people who are procreating and not even in relationships. Then we got people in marriages that have bought into the idea that as soon as I don't like it, I can bounce. Not understanding that when you do that, you leave things behind. You break things when you don't have a true appreciation. And then because marriage has become so easy to get out of, people enter into it lightly. They don't give consideration to who they're connecting with. They don't give consideration of what it looks like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. They don't give any considerations that right now, this is how I feel. I want the big wedding. I want everybody to see that I found me a woman, I found me a man, and they do this and they do that. And it's all a presentation, but nobody's thinking about the work behind the marriage. We spend more energy in weddings than we do in marriages, and it's showing. And the problem is, it's so hard rearing productive, balanced, and mentally healthy children outside of marriage. The statistics bear that out. The research bears it out. Can you have a person that shows up and does great in their life coming from a single parent household? Yeah, we've done a great job of doing that, but how balanced are they? How can they contribute socially? Or are they really centered and focused on what society says is successful? Are they really in a place where they can produce and procreate and create something that has lost its value? What are their viewpoints on single parenthood, having come from a single parent home? Yes, some of them have decided my child won't grow up in a single parent home. Others have decided I don't need a man. Others have decided I'm not ever settling down, with no woman. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And what I'm telling you is I get to see the fallout. I get to help people heal from the hurt of that. I've told you guys before about adverse childhood experiences. One of the most potent and lethal and dangerous adverse childhood experiences is the separation of parents. There are others, and they lead to long-term catastrophic impacts on health, life outcomes, and the ability to be socially engaged, pro-social, and ready to perform at a level that doesn't only benefit you, but it benefits the collective. We have truly lost sight of the need of a powerful collective in the Black community. It's about, look what I'm doing. And because we are so individualized, as long as it's not impacting me, as long as it's not impacting me, then I'm good. Forget that statistics show without a shadow of a doubt that having the father in the home provides a very powerful force and increases the chances of success in the child's life. Does that mean that we want toxic dads in the home? That's not what we're saying. We're saying we have to be reasonable with our interpretation of what we're presenting. We're saying that when a person is healthy and they have something to add, it works better when they're in the home, because the way that this thing is designed by the creator is that there was meant to be a certain amount of masculine energy, a certain amount of feminine energy. And that when you merge the feminine with the masculine, you create a syncing of the two energies, and the syncing of that energy is called synergy. Synergy is an understood phenomenon in the world of the merging of two energies to create a source of power greater than the two individual entities by themselves. So when you take a woman who's on her A game and you take a man who's on his A game, he's been prepared, he's been taught, he knows who he is, he's ready to go out and make something happen in the world. You take a woman who knows who she is, she's been taught, she's been prepared to plug in and connect. She has her own vision and her own purpose, but they find the unity and the familiarness of where they're headed, and they agree. They have the same value system, they have the same interests, they want to do the same thing in the world, and they want to project those values, those interests, and those principles forward into generations. And to do that, they procreate and they create children. But in that home, They inculcate the very principles that have made them successful into their children. They inculcate the idea of collectivism. They inculcate the idea of financial responsibility and the need for generational wealth. They inculcate the responsibility of man being a provider, a protector, a covering, a spiritual, and the woman being a support and an understander of what needs to be done, and them understanding and respecting each other's power in a way that they work together, that a man never brings harm to a woman, that a woman does not in her distraction discourage a man. One of the things that we've got to understand, a distracted woman discouraged, a broken man harms. We've got to make sure that we're not producing broken women and broken men that create these problems later on in life. That's what we should be focusing on. But you can't do it when they're 24, when they're 25, and life has already taken hold and they have already bought into secular ideas of who they are and what they're supposed to be doing. They haven't already bought into the social media surge and push to become like something they're not in order to be accepted. We have a responsibility, and we can't pray through that responsibility and let prayer work. We pray about our responsibility, but we must be prepared to take action. Let me tell you something. There's nobody more prayed up than Black people. There's nobody more churched than Black people. Yet, if you study us, we are in last in every socioeconomic category you can imagine. So then you would start to say, well, maybe prayer doesn't work. No, prayer is misunderstood. Prayer is misplaced. Prayer is mishandled. Prayer is about revelation. The reason Black people consistently lose is because we don't understand how things work. We're constantly praying, but we're not learning how things work. When you understand how things work, you use your knowledge of how things work to create a better situation for yourself. Hey, little sis. The problem is when all I do is pray, who's doing the work? See, I have to pray, but I also need to teach. I have to pray, but I also need to work. I have to pray, and I also need to protect. I have to pray, but I also need to provide. I use my prayer to open the eyes, my spiritual eyes, so that I can see the way that I should be moving, how I should be operating. I use prayer to make sure that when I'm interpreting my work and my research, that I see the little intricacies that hide the reality of what my people are struggling with, so that when I go in, I put in the work is effective. I pray for revelation, but I move in action to deliver the results I want. We got to stop thinking that prayer is going to produce a supernatural end to a suffering that we've had for 400 years. It's about time to wake up. And I know that the people who passed away on yesterday were not Black, and my heart goes out to them, but see, they already understand how to put work with their prayer. That's why they've surpassed us in almost every area and socioeconomic reality that exists in this country, because they have a collectiveness, they have a togetherness, they figure it out. They have literally in 25 years moved from being sole employees in most construction companies to being the majority owners in most small and mid-sized construction companies, because they understand how things work. Something that we need to grasp, something that we need to engage, but it starts in the family. It's real hard teaching somebody 25 years old Black group economics when all they've seen is consumerism. Everybody wants Jordans and iPhones. Everybody wants to drive a car that makes people think they're special, not knowing that what makes them special is on the inside, and what they're able to do in their lives to change lives, to touch lives, to empower lives, to heal lives. That's where your gifting has you and plants you in places where your presence is felt in the life of people who should matter to you. What you drive is just a result of how good you move and what you do and how you operate. Because I have no problem when you're good at something being compensated for being good at it, but you got to be doing something for somebody. You got to be helping somebody. Sometimes you're going to do it for free. Sometimes you're going to pay, but what you're going to be doing is helping somebody. You can't be on your A game and you're not helping anybody, because you are now a part of the problem. It means you bought into the idea of individualism. That means they'll actually going to laud you around in front of those who you should be helping and telling them, if he can do it or she can do it, why can't you? Not understanding that certain things had to be done for you to make it. You didn't just make it because you made it. You made it because there were certain things you were able to navigate. Maybe somebody helped you. Maybe there was a teacher. Maybe there was a mentor. Maybe there was somebody, but somebody helped you, but you stopped. You didn't pay it forward. We need people to be actively engaged. We need people who are going to stand up and put in work. We need people who are going to say our children need to be safe, and this is what we're going to do to make them safe. We need people to say our elderly need to be able to shop at grocery stores and feel safe, and we're going to provide security. We need people to say, if you come into our neighborhood to cause harm, you will not leave our neighborhood. We need warriors. We need people who make it very clear that harming someone in our community comes with consequences. And that goes for even if you're from the community. If you harm somebody in the community, it comes with consequences. Men, it's time to stand up. Because see, I could talk about prayer. I can pray that God protects my children. But what I know by my studies and an understanding of human development, I understand that God equipped me to be the protector. That's why at a certain age, when I started to go through puberty, I developed the ability to develop muscle and muscle strength and bone density, and even a little bit more aggressive mentality. Why? So that I'm willing to protect, to use the strength that I have that is greater than the woman's, to protect the woman, to protect the elderly, to protect myself, of course, and to stand with my brothers and defend. We need warriors. We are built to be warriors. Warriors don't pray. Warriors war. There's a time to pray. But when the battle starts, you got to be on the battlefield. We need to be warring in the way of education. We need to be warring in the way of how we handle our finances. We need to be teaching our kids, but hey, just pray about it. We're sending in prayers. I'm telling you right now, as a mental health expert, a person who deals with human behavior on a daily basis is what I do. It's how I make a living. Let me tell you something. While most people will not tell you this, telling a person, I'm praying for you, I'd rather just say I'm sending condolences. When you tell a person I'm praying for you, it's a way of basically saying, I'm using this as a way of not having to take action. It's saying, I don't really know what to do, or I don't know how to do it. And the idea of trying to figure it out makes me uncomfortable. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to pray for you. Now, in the truth of the matter is that person needs professional help. That person needs resources to help them process what has happened to them, because they are going through a loss that most people can't understand. Whether they're burying a mother, brother, or whether they're burying a child, it's a loss. It's a traumatic experience. And how they process it is going to determine whether or not they are traumatized by the traumatic experience. And you may not have any inkling on what to do about it. That's okay. But when you say, I'm going to pray for you, it has lost its savor, so to speak. It has lost its potency, because people see it now as just simply a way of saying, I'm not going to do anything. Sometimes You want to really truly help somebody, say, look, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to come by and sit with you for an hour. We can talk or we can just sit there, but I'm going to come by and spend some time with you. I'm going to come sit down and partake and lean into your hurt with you. You won't travel it by yourself. I'm going to share a little bit with you. I can't take away the pain, but I can share a little bit with you. I can come with you and let you lean into me for a while. If you really want to do something for somebody that's hurting like that, do that. If you want to do something about what happened yesterday, you got to become active. You got to find out ways that can be stopped or at least mitigated and reduced in frequency. And then you get involved in it. Don't get caught up into the politics and the rhetoric of either side of the argument. Find what can actually be done in your community to make the people in your community safe, and you take action. I guarantee you, whether it was the shooter yesterday or the shooter who killed those 10 Black people in Buffalo, New York, if it would have been in an area where it was clear and understood that going in this area and messing with Black people will get you killed, or going into this school and thinking you're going to do something will get you lit up, I guarantee you they're not going in that school. The shooter in Buffalo scouted, did months and months of research to find a place, drove 7 hours, if I'm not mistaken, from one place to that. Primary reason he chose it, the concentration of Black people. It was one of the most Black communities, predominantly Black communities in the area. But another part was nobody was protecting that one police officer, retired police officer, and that's it. There was no history of anybody standing up and saying, we will not tolerate violence in this community, or we will retaliate with all force available. He chose a place where people were vulnerable, and no one was even thinking about protecting because no one was expecting the unexpected. We have a responsibility to ourselves to always be prepared, and we're not. We have a responsibility to ourselves to prepare our children, and they're not. We have a responsibility to ourselves to heal our homes, and we're not. And we're wondering why we keep getting what we keep getting. It's because we keep expecting a miracle instead of creating a new reality for ourselves. I believe in prayer, but I believe prayer prepares. You still got to put in the work. That's my challenge to my people. We want to end suffering. We do it by creating the means through which to do it. We have to stop practicing escapism and start teaching ourselves and preparing ourselves to take the power necessary to be who we are designed to be and who we say we want to be and what we want to do. We can't keep sending generation after generation of youth unprepared into a world that's inherently hostile to them and then demanding that they somehow excel in great numbers. That starts in the home. That means the home needs to be repaired. That means the Black family needs to be restored. That means that we need to be teaching financial responsibility and wealth building. That means that we need to be teaching self-love and Black love and embracing the beauty of ourselves instead of pursuing some Eurocentric idea of what is. The one thing I love about love itself is that when you love yourself at a high enough level, you don't have to hate anybody, but you're prepared to deal with anybody who crosses you. See, when you don't really love yourself, you got to be mad and angry and hating and everything else to be moved to action. See, I don't have to hate nobody. You touch or threaten my family, you will feel me. It's period. It's etched in my DNA. I don't have to be angry. I don't have to be riled up. You touch or bother or threaten my family, you will feel me. And if I'm in my community and you come in my community and you're trying to do harm in my community, you will feel me. And that needs to be inculcated into the very soul of Black men. We need to make our communities safe. We need to make our schools safe. We need to make our homes safe. That's nobody's responsibility but ours. It's time to take action. It really is. I'm not going to go any longer. I'm going to get off of here, but that had to be said. And as I said, as I reminded you guys in the beginning of this video, show some love for the work we do. We are always looking to help in funding the programs we have. If you know the work I've done, if you've been a part or seen or what I've done over the last 12 or so years I've been on social media, and the other 15 years or so before that, you know what I've done. You know the work I've done. If you've read any of my books, you know the type of energy and effort I put into solutions. If you've gone to the Odyssey website, you've seen the energy and effort I put into solutions. Those solutions have to be implemented. It's no way you have the resource of knowledge of how to change something, but you're sitting on it because nobody wants to get behind it. And people are literally suffering because of it. That's foolishness. This is the time you pray with your mind, your hands, your legs, your force, your pocketbook, and so many other things. You pray with those things. You pray with the things that you can use. You pray with those things that you use to change things. It was Frederick Douglass. I'm going to say this and I'm done. It was Frederick Douglass that said, for years, I prayed for freedom. But it wasn't until I started to pray with my legs that I achieved it. It's time to put in work. On that note, look, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day. Keep your head up. Again, this isn't an attack on prayer. This is a challenge to stand up and take action after you pray. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day.